The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dense Pacific Northwest forest. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and the distant sound of an owl hooting. It was August 23, 1972, a day that would be etched into the memory of the small community of Mill Creek, near Seattle. Jody Loomis, a vibrant 20-year-old with a passion for horses, pedaled her bicycle along the winding forest road. Her long hair fluttered behind her like a flag of freedom. She was on her way to the stables to visit her beloved horse, a journey she had made countless times before. However, this time was different. This time, her father, who usually accompanied her, was preoccupied. Jody, undeterred, decided to make the trip alone. As the forest enveloped her, a sense of unease crept over her. She was familiar with these woods, yet today they seemed unfamiliar, almost menacing. The fading light played tricks on her eyes, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets she couldn't understand. Miles away, her parents waited, unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. This serene setting was about to become the stage for a grim discovery that would shock the community and baffle investigators for decades. A sudden snap of a twig, a rustle in the underbrush, and Jody's heart raced. She pedaled faster, her breath coming in short gasps. But the forest, with its darkening shadows and hidden eyes, was closing in on her, holding a secret that would remain shrouded in mystery for far too long. That evening, as the forest fell silent under the cloak of night, a chilling scream echoed through the trees, a harbinger of the horror that had just occurred. Jody Loomis, the girl with dreams as vast as the sky and a love for horses that knew no bounds, had encountered a fate no one could have foreseen. In the tranquility of the woods, a story of horror and mystery was just beginning, a story that would remain an enigma, leaving haunting echoes in the hearts of those who dared to remember. The forests of Mill Creek, once a sanctuary of natural beauty, had become a silent witness to a heinous crime. As the days turned to weeks, and weeks to years, the case of Jody Loomis faded like a ghostly whisper among the towering pines. The investigators, once fueled by the urgency of justice, found themselves grappling with the cold, unyielding grip of a case gone stagnant. Decades slipped by, as relentless and unforgiving as the passage of time itself. The files on Jody's case grew dusty in the forgotten corners of the police station. The once fervent promise to uncover the truth had now settled into a somber resignation. The community, too, had learned to live with the unsolved mystery, a dark shadow hanging over their collective memory. But even the deepest shadows cannot extinguish the smallest flicker of hope. Unseen, unheard, the case continued to breathe in the hearts of a few determined souls who refused to let Jody's story end in the silence of the archives. Behind the scenes, a handful of detectives, some of whom were not even born when the tragedy struck, quietly inherited the mantle of the quest for truth. They periodically revisited the case, flipping through the yellowed pages of reports, examining the faded photographs, and rehashing old theories, hoping for a breakthrough. As technology advanced, so did the possibilities. The old methods of investigation gave way to new scientific breakthroughs, and the once cold case began to thaw in the light of modern forensics. Little did anyone know, the silent years were about to be shattered, and the echoes of the past would soon reverberate with newfound urgency. The story of Jody Loomis, preserved in the annals of unsolved mysteries, was on the brink of awakening. The whispers in the forest, long muted by the passing years, were ready to speak again, this time to an audience armed with tools and determination the likes of which had never been seen in the years prior. The silent guardians of her story were about to witness a resurrection of hope in the quest for justice. In the heart of Mill Creek, a suburb shadowed by the mystery of Jody Loomis' untimely demise, life continued with the steady rhythm of the ordinary. But within the walls of a modest house adorned with horse-themed decor, the Loomis family nurtured the memory of a life taken too soon. Jody, born in 1944, had been a beacon of joy and creativity. Her room, still preserved as she had left it, was a canvas of her passions. The walls bore witness to her artistic soul, adorned with sketches of horses, each stroke a testament to her love for these majestic creatures. Her talent with the brush was as natural as her affinity for horseback riding, a skill she had honed since her early years. Her aspirations reached beyond the stables and art studios. Jody had dreams of nurturing life, intending to pursue a career in nursing. She imagined a future where she could blend her compassion with her skills, a future that promised fulfillment and purpose. Beyond her ambitions, Jody was a cornerstone of her family. Living with her parents and younger sister, she was the thread that wove love and laughter into the fabric of their daily lives. Her bond with her sister was a blend of mentorship and camaraderie, a relationship cherished and deeply missed. In 1972, when Jody turned 20, life presented a new chapter of joy. Her engagement to Jim, a young man who shared her values and dreams. Their love was a budding promise, a future envisaged together, living in the comfort of her family home until they could venture out on their own. Yet, amidst these woven dreams and plans, fate intervened. The vibrant tapestry of Jody's life was left unfinished, her dreams unfulfilled. Her room, once a hub of creativity and hope, stood as a silent museum of what could have been, a poignant reminder of the abrupt end to a life brimming with potential. In this room, where her artistic spirit lingered, her family found solace and a tangible connection to the daughter and sister they had lost. Here, amidst her drawings and memories, Jody's presence was felt most strongly, a bittersweet comfort to the hearts that refused to let her be forgotten. August 23, 1972, dawned like any other day in the Loomis household, but it was a day that would forever change the course of their lives. Jody, filled with the enthusiasm of youth, had made a simple decision: to visit her horse at the stable, a journey she had made numerous times, but never alone. On that fateful day, Jody's father, her usual companion on these trips, was occupied with unexpected matters. Unwilling to postpone her visit, Jody decided to make the trip by bicycle, a decision that carried an air of independence and adventure. The road to the stables was a familiar one, winding through the lush greenery of Mill Creek's forests. Jody set off after noon, her heart light and her spirit free. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the path ahead, as if nature itself was guiding her journey. However, this road less traveled was about to become a path of mystery and tragedy. Jody's mother, always cautious, felt a twinge of apprehension as her daughter rode off. She reminded Jody not to linger until darkness fell and handed her some change for the phone booth, a precaution in case she needed to call home. As the hours passed, the usual punctuality that Jody adhered to began to waver. The clock ticked on, and there was no sign of her return. Her parents' initial concern gradually morphed into a deep, gnawing anxiety. The evening air, once filled with the sounds of day-to-day life, grew heavy with the silence of her absence. As nightfall approached, Jody's parents were engulfed in a state of alarm. The unspoken fear that something terrible had happened began to take root. The road Jody had taken, once a symbol of freedom and joy, now loomed as a harbinger of unknown horrors. In a desperate attempt to find their daughter, they contacted the police, hoping for a quick resolution, hoping that their fears were unfounded. But as the night wore on, their home, once a haven of warmth and security, felt cold and hollow, echoing with the absence of their beloved Jody. The road less traveled, once a path of innocent adventure, had become the stage for a mystery that would haunt the Loomis family and the entire community for years to come. The journey Jody embarked on that day remained incomplete, and the answers her family so desperately sought were lost in the shadows of the forest road. The tranquility of the Loomis home was shattered that night, as the clock ticked into the late hours without any sign of Jody. Her parents' worst fears turned into a harrowing reality when their front door became the threshold for devastating news. It was around 11 p.m. when the police officers arrived, their faces etched with solemnity. The knock on the door echoed through the house, each thud a foreboding drumbeat in the night. Jody's parents, already frayed by hours of worry, felt their hearts sink as they opened the door to the bearers of grim tidings. The officers relayed the inconceivable. Jody had been found, but not in the way anyone had hoped. She was discovered barely clinging to life by a couple passing through the forested road near the stables. The couple, acting on instinct, had rushed her to the nearest hospital, but Jody's injuries were too severe. The young woman, full of dreams and love for horses, had succumbed to her wounds en route to the hospital. The news struck like a lightning bolt, leaving Jody's mother collapsing to the floor in despair, and her father, normally a pillar of strength, speechless and shaken to his core. The home that had been filled with laughter and plans for the future was now a cavern of grief and unanswered questions. The police, somber and respectful, detailed the preliminary findings. Jody had suffered multiple severe injuries, including a gunshot wound to the head. The brutality of the attack was beyond comprehension, a stark contrast to the life of gentleness and care she had led. As the night wore on, the Loomis home became a place of mourning, the family grappling with a loss so profound it seemed to consume the very air. The dreams and plans they had shared with Jody were now fragments of a shattered future, pieces of a puzzle that would take years to assemble into a coherent picture. In the darkness of that shattered evening, as the family grappled with the reality of their loss, the mystery of what had transpired on that forest road began to unfold. It was a mystery that would challenge the minds and hearts of all who touched it, a puzzle that demanded to be solved, not just for justice, but for the peace of a family torn apart by tragedy. In the wake of the tragedy, the local police department launched a full-scale investigation into Jody Loomis' untimely death. The initial burst of activity and determination was palpable as detectives scoured the area, interviewed potential witnesses, and collected whatever evidence they could find. The forest road, once a serene path, became a focal point of forensic analysis. Investigators combed through every inch of the vicinity where Jody was found, seeking clues that would lead them to her assailant. Jody's bicycle, discovered abandoned nearby, became a silent witness to the unspeakable events. Despite their best efforts, the investigation hit one dead end after another. The bullet that had taken Jody's life and the DNA evidence at the crime scene yielded no immediate leads. Each potential witness interviewed led nowhere, their memories offering no glimpse into the perpetrator's identity. Jody's fiancé, Jim, heartbroken and distraught, was scrutinized, but his alibi was ironclad, placing him far from the scene of the crime. The community was interviewed extensively, but no one had seen anything unusual or suspicious. The case, which had started with a flurry of activity, began to lose momentum as leads dried up and clues led to more questions than answers. As months turned into years, the fervor of the investigation waned. The case of Jody Loomis transitioned from an active investigation to a cold file, tucked away in the back of a drawer, a haunting reminder of justice unfulfilled. In the heart of the community, the unsolved case cast a shadow. Parents held their children a little tighter, and the once trusting atmosphere of Mill Creek was tinged with a sense of unease. The name Jody Loomis became synonymous with a mystery that, as the years passed, seemed increasingly unlikely to be solved. The trail had gone cold, and with it, the hope of finding closure. The police, despite their initial resolve, were left with a case that had more questions than answers, a puzzle missing too many pieces. In this void of uncertainty, the memory of Jody Loomis continued to linger, a ghostly presence in a community forever changed by a single tragic event. Years turned into decades, and the world changed in countless ways, but the mystery of Jody Loomis' untimely demise remained a frozen fragment in time. The case, buried under the weight of newer crimes and fading memories, seemed destined to be a tragic footnote in the annals of unsolved mysteries. However, in the persistent hearts of a few dedicated detectives, the embers of the case remained alive, smoldering beneath the surface. As advancements in forensic technology began to revolutionize crime solving, these embers were fanned into a new flame of hope. It was the dawn of the 21st century, a time when DNA analysis had begun to play a pivotal role in criminal investigations. The once cold case of Jody Loomis was re-examined with fresh eyes and new tools. The small, overlooked pieces of evidence, preserved for years, were now potential keys to unlocking the long-stagnant mystery. Detectives pored over the old files, re-interviewing witnesses who were now decades older, their memories faded but potentially still holding crucial, overlooked details. The case was not just a professional pursuit for these investigators. It had become a personal mission, a quest for justice for a young woman whose life had been brutally and senselessly cut short. The breakthrough came when a minute piece of evidence, a tiny speck on Jody's clothing, long overlooked, was reanalyzed with modern DNA techniques. This tiny clue, insignificant to the eyes of the past, now shone like a beacon in the dark, guiding the investigators towards a new path in their search for the truth. As the detectives delved deeper into the renewed investigation, the community of Mill Creek also experienced a resurgence of interest and emotion regarding the case. People who had lived in fear and uncertainty for years began to feel a glimmer of hope that justice for Jody Loomis might finally be within reach. The awakening of the past brought with it a whirlwind of activity and anticipation. The cold case that had once seemed doomed to obscurity was now at the forefront of a cutting-edge investigation. In the halls of the police department, the name Jody Loomis was spoken again, not as a distant memory, but as a present challenge, a mystery that was begging to be solved. The resurgence of the Jody Loomis case brought a new sense of urgency and hope. With advancements in forensic science, particularly DNA analysis, the investigators now had a powerful tool that wasn't available during the initial investigation. At the heart of this renewed effort was the small sample of DNA found on Jody's clothing. This minute piece of evidence, which had lain dormant and unnoticed for years, became the focal point of the investigation. The sample was sent to a specialized laboratory, where advanced techniques were used to extract and analyze the genetic material. The results were groundbreaking. The DNA belonged to an unknown male, a revelation that reignited the case and provided a tangible lead for the investigators to pursue. This genetic fingerprint, unique and unchanging, was the silent testimony that had the potential to unveil the identity of Jody's assailant. The detectives, now armed with this crucial piece of evidence, began the arduous task of cross-referencing the DNA sample with existing databases. But the path to finding a match was fraught with challenges. The DNA did not match any profiles in the criminal databases, suggesting that the perpetrator had never been caught for a crime that required DNA sampling. This setback, however, did not deter the investigative team. They expanded their search, reaching out to other agencies and exploring the potential of familial DNA, which could lead them to relatives of the suspect, and consequently, to the suspect himself. As the investigation progressed, the community of Mill Creek watched with bated breath. The case that had haunted them for decades was showing signs of movement, and the possibility of closure seemed closer than ever. The breakthrough in DNA technology had not only rekindled the investigation, but had also brought a renewed sense of hope to Jody's family and friends. They dared to hope that the shadow of uncertainty and injustice that had lingered over their lives for so long might finally be lifted. In this new era of forensic science, the DNA revelation had become a beacon of light in the darkness, a guide leading the way towards truth and justice, in a case that had long seemed destined to remain an unsolved mystery. The revelation of the unknown male DNA on Jody Loomis' clothing was a significant turning point in the case, but it was the advent of genetic genealogy that brought the investigation into uncharted territory. In 2018, detectives decided to employ this cutting-edge technique, utilizing public genealogy databases to trace the family tree of the unknown suspect. The process was meticulous and complex. Genetic genealogists worked in tandem with the detectives, piecing together distant family connections using the DNA sample. Each genetic link was a clue, leading them through a labyrinth of ancestral lines and familial ties. The goal was to narrow down the list of potential suspects to individuals who fit the profile: male, and within the right age range and geographical location at the time of the crime. After countless hours of research and analysis, the genealogists identified a distant cousin of the suspect. This breakthrough was monumental. It was the first ray of light in a dark, decades-long tunnel. The detectives and genealogists meticulously traced the family tree of this cousin, filtering through generations, looking for someone who could be the missing piece in the puzzle. The investigation led them to a name: Terrence Miller, a man who lived in relative obscurity, a mere 8 kilometers from where Jody was last seen alive. Miller, in his 70s at the time of this breakthrough, had a troubling past marked by incidents of violence, including charges involving children, although he had never been convicted. Armed with this information, the detectives embarked on a covert operation to obtain a fresh DNA sample from Miller. They followed him discreetly, waiting for an opportunity to collect a sample without his knowledge. The moment came when Miller discarded a coffee cup, which the detectives promptly collected for analysis. The DNA from the coffee cup was a match to the sample found on Jody's clothing, a conclusive link that unmasked the shadow lurking in the background of this decades-old mystery. The man who had lived a seemingly ordinary life in the community was, in fact, the perpetrator of a heinous crime that had haunted Mill Creek for over 45 years. The arrest of Terrence Miller brought a flood of emotions to the community and especially to Jody's family. Relief, sorrow, and a bittersweet sense of justice intermingled as they processed the news. The mystery that had overshadowed their lives for so long was finally resolving, revealing a truth that was as shocking as it was long awaited. In the wake of this revelation, the community of Mill Creek grappled with the reality of the monster who had lived among them, hidden in plain sight. The case of Jody Loomis, once a symbol of an unsolvable puzzle, had been unraveled, not through traditional detective work alone, but through the incredible advancements in genetic genealogy and forensic science. The arrest of Terrence Miller in April 2019, nearly 47 years after Jody Loomis' murder, marked the beginning of the final chapter in a long, harrowing saga. The community of Mill Creek, once shadowed by the dark cloud of an unsolved crime, now witnessed the wheels of justice turning, albeit slowly and painfully. The trial was set, and the prosecution prepared their case, bolstered by the incontrovertible DNA evidence that had connected Miller to the crime. For Jody's family, this was a moment they had waited for with a mixture of longing and dread. The pain of reopening old wounds was palpable, but so was the need for closure. However, the path to justice was fraught with unexpected turns. In a shocking development, Terrence Miller was released on bail, a decision that sent ripples of disbelief and anger through the community. Many felt it was a travesty that a man charged with such a heinous crime could walk free, even if only until the trial. As the trial date approached, the prosecution and defense readied themselves for a battle not only of facts but of narratives. The defense challenged the DNA evidence, questioning its handling and the integrity of the decades-old sample. They also pointed to the lack of eyewitnesses or direct evidence linking Miller to the crime scene. In contrast, the prosecution painted a picture of a brutal and senseless crime, linking Miller to Jody through the undeniable evidence of DNA. They spoke of a young woman whose life was full of promise, cruelly snatched away, and a community that had lived in the shadow of her unsolved murder for far too long. But before the trial could fully unfold, the unexpected happened. On the morning the jury was set to deliver their verdict, news broke that Terrence Miller had ended his own life. The sudden turn of events sent shockwaves through the courtroom and the community. For Jody's family, it was a complex mix of emotions. While Miller's death meant he would never face punishment for his crimes, it also marked an end to a chapter that had tormented them for decades. The judge decided to allow the jury to deliver their verdict despite Miller's death, acknowledging the need for formal closure. The jury found Terrence Miller guilty, a verdict that, while symbolic, brought a sense of justice and vindication to Jody's loved ones and the community. Jody's story, which had begun as a young woman's innocent ride through the woods, had traversed through years of mystery, pain, and technological evolution, culminating in a bittersweet symphony of justice. Her memory, once overshadowed by the unknown, was now honored with the truth. As the final chapter of this tragic saga closed, the community of Mill Creek and Jody's family found some solace in the resolution, albeit incomplete. The pursuit of justice, spanning almost half a century, had revealed the power of persistence, the evolution of forensic science, and the enduring strength of a family's love. In the heart of Mill Creek, Jody Loomis' spirit found a restful peace, her story a testament to the unyielding quest for truth and the enduring hope for justice in the face of insurmountable odds.